The wind whispered through the old cemetery like a forgotten apology, carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked earth and wilted flowers. Graham Warden Pierce knelt before the weathered stone, his leather vest creaking under the weight of too many miles, and too few answers. The engraving read simply, "Elias Pierce, beloved son, taken too soon." It had been 3 years since the accident that stole him away. A twisted wreck on a desert highway, they said, some drunk driver vanishing into the night. Graham's calloused hands traced the letters, as if touch could summon back the boy who'd once begged for rides on his Harley, eyes wide with dreams of the open road. He came here every dawn, when the sky bled pink and gold over the horizon, to sit in silence. No prayers, no tears, just the raw ache of a father who'd promised to protect his own and failed. The biker crew, Iron Promise, knew better than to follow him on these pilgrimages. They were his brothers, forged in the fires of old wars and barroom brawls, but even they couldn't bridge this chasm. Graham's breath hitched, the world narrowing to the cold granite under his palms. Footsteps crunched on the gravel path behind him, small, hesitant. He didn't turn at first, assuming it was the groundskeeper or some lost soul wandering the rows of the dead. But then a voice, soft and trembling like a leaf in the breeze, cut through the quiet. "Excuse me, sir? Did you leave this letter here?" Graham's head snapped up. Standing a few feet away was a girl, no older than 10. Her dark hair tangled and her coat too big for her frame. She clutched a yellowed envelope in both hands, holding it out like an offering. Her eyes, wide and shadowed, darted from the paper to his face, as if she feared he'd shatter it, or her, with a single word. He rose slowly, joints protesting from years on the bike, and took the envelope. It was unsealed, the edges frayed. Addressed in looping script, to Dad, from Elias. His heart slammed against his ribs, a thunder that drowned out the wind. Elias's handwriting. Impossible. The boy had been gone, buried right here, his life snuffed out in a heartbeat of screeching tires and shattering glass. "Where did you find this?" Graham's voice was gravel, low and edged with the rumble of engines he'd ridden across endless horizons. The girl, Elsie, she said her name was, though it trembled on her lips, pointed toward a cluster of overgrown bushes near the cemetery's edge. It was stuck under a rock, like someone hid it. I was looking for my grandma's grave. She passed last winter. I come sometimes to talk to her. Her small fingers twisted the hem of her coat, knuckles white. The letter looked important. I didn't mean to pry. Graham's mind reeled, the world tilting like a bike on black ice. He slid the paper out, unfolding it with hands that had steadied throttles through storms, but now shook like a man's on the edge. The words blurred at first, then sharpened into focus. "Dad, if you're reading this, I'm sorry for the lies. The road took me, but not how you think. There's more, a promise I couldn't keep alone. Find the old mill by the river where we fished that summer. Trust no one, especially the badgers. It's about the crew, about what we swore. Forgive me. Ride safe. Elias." The signature was his son's, down to the jagged E that always looked like a lightning bolt. Graham's knees buckled, and he sank back to the ground, the paper crumpling in his fist. Lies. What lies? Elias had been 19, fresh out of the service, riding with the Iron Promise on a supply run when the crash happened. The cops ruled it an accident, closed the case with a shrug. But this was a ghost's confession, pulling at threads Graham had long buried. Elsie hovered, her face pale against the rising sun. "Are you okay, mister? You look like you've seen a ghost." He met her gaze, seeing echoes of his own loss in those young eyes. Parents gone, perhaps, or worse. "Kid, you just handed me one." The weight of it settled in his chest, heavier than any saddlebag. For 3 years he'd carried guilt like a chain, vowing silently at this grave to honor Elias's memory by keeping the crew tight, protecting the lost ones they pulled from the gutters. Now, this letter cracked open a door to secrets, to a promise his son had hidden even from him. The cemetery stirred awake around them, birds calling from the pines, the distant hum of morning traffic on the highway. Graham folded the letter carefully, tucking it into his vest pocket next to the iron promise patch, a fist clenched around a broken chain, symbol of oaths, unbreakable. He couldn't ride away from this, not anymore. The old mill by the river, a place of boyhood laughs and stolen beers, now loomed in his mind like a shadow waiting to swallow him whole. Standing, he placed a gentle hand on Elsie's shoulder, the touch light as if she might vanish. "Thank you for finding this. What's your name again?" "Elsie Rowe." She managed a small smile, brave in the face of his storm. "You gonna be all right?" Graham nodded, though doubt gnawed at him. "Yeah, kid. Sometimes the road leads back to what hurts most. You watch yourself out here, worlds full of hidden things." He watched her walk away, her small figure disappearing among the stones, a stranger who'd just upended his world. As the sun crested fully, bathing the graves in golden light, Graham straddled his Harley, the engine roaring to life with a deep, throaty growl that echoed his resolve. The vibration thrummed through him, a familiar anchor. He glanced back at Elias's stone one last time, whispering, "What did you get into?" "Son, and why drag me back now?" The cemetery gate clanged shut behind him as he hit the road, dust kicking up in his wake. The letter burned against his chest, a beacon pulling him toward answers, or traps. Iron Promise had his back, brothers who'd ride through hell for one of their own. But this felt personal, a father's reckoning with ghosts and half-truths. The highway stretched ahead, endless and unforgiving, mirroring the path his heart now tread. Miles blurred by, the scent of pine and asphalt filling his lungs. Graham's mind raced faster than the bike, Elias's service days, the whispers of shady deals the crew had steered clear of, the cop who'd closed the case too quick, corruption, betrayal. The promise in the letter hinted at something rotten, a justice he'd have to carve out himself. By midday, he pulled into the Iron Promise clubhouse, a weathered barn on the outskirts of town, ringed by choppers gleaming like steel sentinels. The crew was gathered. Jax, the wiry vet with scars from the same war that had bonded them. Lena, the nurse who'd patched more than wounds, her steady hands a quiet force. And Rook, the young hothead Elias had mentored. They looked up as he killed the engine, faces etching with concern at his haunted expression. "Brothers," Graham said, voice steady as he pulled out the letter. "We got unfinished business. Elias ain't done talking yet." The air thickened with unspoken oaths, the kind that bound them tighter than blood. As they clustered around the paper, Graham felt the first spark of purpose since the crash, a redemption he hadn't sought, but one that called him to ride all the same. The old mill waited, and with it, truths that could shatter everything. But Warden didn't back down from shadows. Not for his son, not ever. The clubhouse air hung thick with the scent of aged wood, motor oil, and the faint bitterness of yesterday's coffee brewing on the counter. Sunlight slanted through cracked windows, casting long shadows across the scarred oak table where the Iron Promise crew gathered like sentinels around a fading fire. Graham's boots thudded softly as he spread the letter flat, the paper's edges curling like whispers from the grave. Jax leaned in first, his faded tattoos snaking up arms that had pulled Graham from more than one battlefield haze. Lena hovered nearby, her medic's kit always within reach, eyes sharp with the quiet worry of someone who'd seen too many men break under invisible weights. Rook, still raw at 23, fidgeted with a chain necklace, the one Elias had given him, links forged from scrap metal, a token of brotherhood. They read in silence, the only sound the distant rumble of a truck on the highway outside. Jax's jaw tightened, his voice breaking the hush like a revving engine. Elias's hand, no doubt. But this, This smells like trouble we left in the dust years ago." He traced the words with a scarred finger, the ink faded but defiant. Graham nodded, the weight of the envelope now shared, lightening just enough to let him breathe. The old mill. We fished there when he was knee-high, talking about the club like it was our kingdom. He never mentioned any promises breaking, though. Not to me. Lena crossed her arms, her ponytail swinging like a pendulum. She'd joined the crew after patching up Rook in a roadside skirmish, her steady gaze pulling her into their fold, a chosen sister in a world of rough edges. "Badges," he says. "Trust none of 'em. Sounds like the kind of rot that festers in small towns. Remember that run 2 years back? Cops shaking down the warehouse district, looking for excuses to pin something on us." Her words stirred memories Graham had tried to bury, whispers of crooked deals, shipments that vanished, and Elias's last ride, the one that ended in twisted metal and official shrugs. Rook slammed a fist on the table, not hard enough to splinter wood, but enough to echo his fire. "If someone's messing with Elias's name, we ride. For him. For all of us." The kid's eyes burned with the loyalty Elias had kindled in him, turning a street stray into a brother. Graham felt it too. That unbreakable thread, the iron promise oath sworn under starlit skies. Stand for the fallen, honor the word, protect the pack. But this wasn't a bar fight or a border standoff. It was a father's ghost reaching from the dirt, demanding truths that could unravel them all. "Easy, Rook," Graham murmured, his voice a low rumble like idling chrome. "We don't charge blind. First, we scout the mill. Quiet, no colors flying till we know what's waiting." He folded the letter, tucking it away, the paper's crease a new scar on his soul. The crew murmured agreement, the air shifting from shock to resolve, like storm clouds parting for a rider's path. Jax clapped Graham's shoulder, the grip firm as wartime vows. "You're not alone in this, Warden. Elias was one of us. Whatever he hid, we'd dig it out together." By afternoon, they split tasks with the precision of old ops. Lena headed to the local library, neutral ground, no questions asked, to pull what she could on the mill's history, any old records of accidents or shady dealings. Rook and a couple prospects would shadow the cemetery, eyes on Elsie's path, making sure the girl wasn't tangled in whatever web this was. Graham and Jax took the bikes, engines coughing to life in a symphony of loyalty, the vibrations syncing with their pulses as they cut toward the river. The road wound through scrubland, dust devils dancing in the rear view like restless spirits. Graham's Harley hugged the curves, wind whipping his greying beard, carrying the faint tang of wild sage. Memories flooded unbidden. Elias at 16, perched behind him on this very stretch, laughing as they chased the sunset. "One day, Dad, I'll lead the promise. Keep it clean, keep it true." The promise now twisted in Graham's gut. What had his boy hidden? A deal gone south? A betrayal from within? The letter's warning about badges echoed, stirring old distrust. The sheriff's office had closed Elias's case too neat, no pursuit of the phantom driver, just condolences and a file stamped done. They crested a hill, the river glittering below like a silver vein through the earth. The old mill squatted on its bank, a relic of rusted beams and sagging roofs, vines clawing at the walls, as if nature itself sought to reclaim it. Graham killed the engine, the silence amplifying the lap of water and creak of settling metal. Jax dismounted, scanning the tree line, with eyes honed by years evading patrols. "Place looks deserted. But feel that? Eyes on us." Graham nodded, senses sharpening. The snap of a twig too deliberate, the faint glint of sunlight off something metallic in the underbrush. They approached on foot, boots silent on the cracked earth, the air heavy with damp stone and forgotten time. The mill door hung ajar, hinges groaning like a warning. Inside, shadows pooled deep, broken machinery looming like ancient guardians. Graham's hand brushed the wall, fingers tracing graffiti from decades past. Names, dates, oaths carved in haste. A scuff of gravel outside yanked them alert. Jax drew a breath, hand hovering near his belt, but Graham signaled restraint. Peering through a grimy window, they spotted a figure retreating into the woods, a silhouette too quick, too purposeful. Not a threat charging, but a shadow fleeing. "Someone was here," Jax whispered, tension coiling like a spring. Graham's mind raced. Elias's words, the hidden letter, now this watcher. Coincidence? Or a trail leading deeper into the lies? They searched methodically, flashlights cutting beams through dust motes that swirled like secrets. In a corner, under a pile of rotted sacks, Graham's boot nudged something solid, a small metal box, locked, etched with the iron promise fist. His heart thudded. Elias's work. He pried it open with a knife, revealing a folded map and a single key. No note. Just coordinates marked in red, an abandoned warehouse on the town's edge. Back outside, the sun dipped low, painting the river in bloody hues. Jax pocketed the find. "This is bigger than one crash. Promises we all swore. Elias kept his end, hid it for us." Graham mounted up, the engine's roar, a vow renewed. As they rode back, the weight settled heavier. Redemption wasn't just for him, but for the crew, for the son who'd trusted them to carry on. But trust no one, the letter warned. Even brothers could harbor shadows. Dusk cloaked the clubhouse as they returned. Lena waiting with a stack of yellowed clippings. Mill fires in the 90s, unexplained disappearances tied to local enforcers. Rook reported Elsie safe, playing in a park with friends, no tales. But the map burned in Graham's pocket, pulling him toward the warehouse, toward truths that could redeem or destroy. The iron promise fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering light on faces bound by more than ink and leather. Tonight, they planned. Oaths whispered in the glow. The road ahead twisted, but Warden rode for answers, for the boy who'd never truly left. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The night air in the clubhouse thickened like smoke from a backfired exhaust, wrapping around the Iron Promise crew as they huddled over the scarred table. The map lay unfurled under the harsh glow of a single bulb, its red ink tracing a jagged path to the warehouse on the town's frayed edge. A forgotten relic from the industrial boom, now a ghost of rusted silos and chain-link fences bowed by years of neglect. Graham's fingers drummed a slow rhythm on the wood, echoing the pulse of uncertainty that had settled in his bones since the cemetery. The key from the mill box glinted beside it, small and innocuous, like a promise waiting to be tested. Jax paced the room's perimeter, his boots scuffing the concrete floor, worn smooth by countless gatherings. Warehouse district's a snake pit. Used to be neutral ground for runs, but after Elias's crash, we steered clear. Too many eyes, too many hands in pockets that ain't ours. His voice carried the gravel of old suspicions, honed from dodging checkpoints in foreign sands. Lena nodded from her chair, flipping through her clippings with the precision of someone dissecting a wound. These reports, disappearances, mill tied to some old smuggling ring. Nothing solid, but whispers of badges on the take. If Elias stumbled into that, he might have buried it to protect us all. Rook leaned against the wall, arms crossed over his chest, the chain necklace catching the light like a talisman. "We ride at first light. I ain't waiting for dawn to crack this open." His youth burned bright, but Graham saw the flicker of fear beneath. Elias had been his anchor, pulling him from the streets with stories of honor and the open road. The crew's silence stretched, heavy with the weight of oaths unspoken. Iron Promise wasn't just ink on leather. It was the vow to stand when the world buckled, to redeem the lost through quiet acts of loyalty. But this trail led into shadows that could swallow them whole. Graham rose, the chair scraping like a reluctant confession. "No full crew, just me, Jax and Rook. Lena, you hold the fort. Eyes on the wires. Any chatter from town?" She met his gaze, her expression a mix of resolve and quiet plea. The nurse in her knowing wounds ran deeper than skin. As the men geared up, the clubhouse stirred with purpose. Vests zipped, knives checked, engines warmed in the lot outside. The scent of cool night air mingled with oil and resolve, a sensory vow that the road would reveal what graves concealed. They rolled out under a moonless sky, the trio's Harleys cutting through the quiet like predators on the prowl. The highway hummed beneath them, wind slicing sharp against Graham's face, carrying the faint brine of the distant river. Memories clawed at him. Elias's last ride, the call from the hospital that shattered the dawn. "Accident, sir. Nothing we could do." The official story had been clean, too clean, a drunk driver fleeing into anonymity. But the letter's words gnawed. Lies, promises broken, trust no badges. Graham throttled harder, the vibration a tether to sanity, pushing back the ache that threatened to unseat him. The warehouse loomed as they crested the final rise, a hulking silhouette against the star-pricked dark, its fences sagging like weary sentries. They killed the engines a quarter-mile out, wheeling the bikes into a thicket of scrub to muffle their approach. Footsteps crunched on gravel as they advanced, shadows merging with the night. Jax took point, his form low and silent, while Rook flanked, breath steady despite the tension coiling in his frame. Graham's hand rested on the key in his pocket, its edges biting into his palm, a reminder that this was for Elias, for the boy who'd etched loyalty into his soul with every shared mile. The side gate yielded to the key with a soft click, the lock protesting like a held breath released. Inside, the air hung stale, laced with dust and the metallic tang of abandonment. Moonlight filtered through shattered skylights, painting jagged patterns on crates stacked like forgotten tombs. They moved in tandem, flashlights off to avoid drawing eyes, senses attuned to every creak and whisper. "Fan out," Graham murmured, his voice a low rumble. "Look for anything Elias touched, marks, hides, anything." Rook veered toward a row of rusted barrels, his beam catching on a loose panel in the wall. He pried it open, revealing a shallow alcove stuffed with yellowed ledgers and a single sealed envelope. "Warden, over here." The paper bore the same looping script, "To the promise." Graham's pulse quickened as he broke the seal, words spilling out in the dim light. "Crew. The shipments weren't clean, badges in on it, skimming for years. I found proof. Docks in the mill safe, but they got wind. The crash. No accident. Had to fake it, go under to draw 'em out. Dad, if you read this, lead 'em true. The real ledgers at the old bridge drop. Burn it all after. Honor the oath. Elias." The revelation hit like a skid on loose gravel, spinning Graham's world. Fake it? Elias alive, buried in deception to shield them? Or a deeper lie, someone puppeteering his son's ghost? Jax whistled low, scanning the ledgers. Names, dates, payoffs to shadowed figures in the sheriff's office. This ties back to the mill, corruption running deep like roots in bad soil. Rook's face paled, fists clenching. If he's out there, we find him. No more graves. A sudden crunch outside shattered the hush, tires on gravel, headlights sweeping the fence like accusatory fingers. Voices barked, low and urgent. "Check the perimeter." Heard bikes earlier. Badges, or worse, enforcers tied to the ledgers. The trio froze, hearts pounding in sync with the encroaching footsteps. Graham signaled retreat, pocketing the envelope as they slipped toward a back exit, shadows their only ally. They burst into the night, mounting up and gunning engines in a roar that masked their escape. Bullets of light from pursuing vehicles grazing the dark. The chase wound through back roads, dust clouds billowing like veils of deceit. Graham led, weaving tight, the wind a howl of fury and fragile hope. Elias faked? The possibility ignited a fire in his chest, redemption flickering amid the grief, but the pursuers closed, sirens wailing now, official, relentless. Jax's voice crackled over a hidden comm. "Split at the fork. Draw 'em off." Rook peeled away, a lone wolf buying time, while Graham and Jax pushed toward the river, the bridge ahead, a beacon of truths yet unveiled. Dawn's first blush stained the horizon as they lost the tail, pulling into a hidden cove by the water. Breath ragged, Graham unfolded the new note, the river's murmur, a somber chorus. "He's out there, or someone wants us to think so. Either way, the promise holds." Jax nodded, the bond between them ironclad, forged in loss and unyielding loyalty. The crew's family, chosen, unbreakable, faced a reckoning. Justice not in vengeance, but in uncovering the rot that had stolen a son, real or shadowed. The road twisted onward, pulling Graham deeper into the maze of promises and the faint, impossible hope of reunion. The river's edge cradled their bikes like a reluctant confessor, the water's gentle lap mocking the chaos that had just ripped through the night. Graham dismounted first, his boots sinking into the soft mud that clung like unresolved doubts. The air hung heavy with the scent of wet earth and exhaust, the first rays of dawn slicing through the mist like hesitant accusations. Jax killed his engine with a final sputter, swinging a leg over and scanning the tree line, his breath still ragged from the chase. The pursuing lights had faded miles back, swallowed by the labyrinth of back roads, but the echo of sirens lingered in Graham's ears, a siren's call to deeper peril. He pulled the new envelope from his vest, the paper damp from sweat and dew, unfolding it under the pale light. Elias's words stared back, each loop a dagger to the heart. Faked the crash, buried to draw them out. Graham's fingers trembled, tracing the signature as if it could summon the boy from thin air. 3 years of grief, of dawn vigils at a stone that now felt like a lie. Was this redemption? A son alive, fighting shadows from afar, or a crueler torment, some enemy's ploy to fracture the iron promise from within? The crew's oath pulsed in his veins. Honor the fallen, but what if none had truly fallen? Jax leaned against his Harley, wiping grime from his brow, his eyes reflecting the river's shimmer. If he's pulling strings from the grave, or wherever, he's got balls of steel. But why us? Why drag you into this web? The question hung between them, thick as the fog rolling off the water. Graham folded the note, tucking it away with the first letter, the weight now a dual burden. "Because it's our promise, Jax. The shipments we ran clean, the ones Elias swore we'd keep that way. If Badges twisted it, he went under to protect the pack. Or, someone wants us to believe that, to ride straight into a trap." They sat in silence as the sun climbed, painting the cove in golden strokes that belied the chill in Graham's bones. Memories surfaced unbidden. Elias at the clubhouse fire, 19 and fierce, reciting the oath with a grin that lit the night. "We choose our blood. Dad, ride for the lost, bury the rot." The boy had idolized the road's freedom, but Graham saw now the shadows he'd chased alone, perhaps stumbling on the corruption that festered in the warehouse ledgers, payoffs to men in uniforms who'd sworn to uphold the law. "Trust no Badges," the first letter warned, and now this confession twisted the knife. A low rumble broke the quiet, Rook's bike cresting the rise, mud splattered and alone. The kid pulled up sharp, face etched with the strain of evasion, but his eyes sparked with news. "Shook 'em at the fork. No tails now." He dismounted, handing over a small drive from his pocket. "Snagged this from the warehouse shadows before peeling off. Looks like a backup. Files. Maybe audio." Graham took it, the plastic cool against his palm, a digital ghost in a world of leather and chrome. Lena's voice crackled over the comm they'd rigged earlier. "Clubhouse secure. No chatter yet, but town's buzzing. Keep low." Elsie's name popped in a park report. Nothing tied, but eyes are everywhere. Elsie, the girl from the cemetery, her small hand offering the impossible. Graham's gut twisted. Innocent messenger or unwitting pawn? He'd seen her walk away that morning, brave in loss, but now the web tightened. We head back, decrypt this. No more solo runs. The trio mounted up, engines growling to life in unison, the vibration sinking their resolve like a heartbeat. The road back wound through dawn's embrace, sunlight filtering through pines that whispered of hidden paths. Graham led, wind tearing at his beard, carrying the faint, acrid tang of burning rubber from the chase. Hope flickered, fragile as a match in gusts, a chance to reclaim his son, to redeem the promise he'd failed by believing the lie too soon. By mid-morning, the clubhouse doors creaked open to welcome them, the air inside warmer, laced with fresh coffee and the subtle oil of Lena's workbench. She met them at the threshold, her medic's bag slung over one shoulder, face set in quiet determination. Decoded the clippings deeper, Mill's old owner vanished after a dispute with the sheriff's kin. Ties to those shipments, all right. Smells like protection rackets dressed as law. Rook plugged the drive into an old laptop. The screen flickering to life with grainy files. Audio logs of hushed calls, voices masked but unmistakable, badges bartering secrets. Elias's name dropped in warning tones. He was onto them. Rook muttered, replaying a clip where a gravelly timbre hissed. The kid's digging too deep, handle it quiet. Graham's world narrowed to the speaker's rasp, each word a brick in the wall of betrayal. Elias hadn't died in accident's chaos. He'd been targeted, forced to vanish to expose the rot without dragging the crew under. The realization burned, a father's blindness, a son's sacrifice. But the files ended abrupt, a final log cutting off mid-sentence. Coordinates to the old bridge drop, the real ledger waiting. "That's our next move," Graham said, voice steady as forged steel. "Burn it after, like he said. End this poison." Lena placed a hand on his arm, her touch grounding, a sister's loyalty in the chosen family that had sustained him through grief. "And if he's alive? What then?" The question pierced, stirring the ethical storm. Pursue a ghost, risk the pack for one man's truth? Jax nodded toward the map. "Oath says we ride. For Elias, for all the promises we keep." Rook's eyes met Graham's. The kids' fire tempered now by the weight they shared. No hothead charge, but measured justice, poetic in its restraint. As noon arched high, casting sharp shadows through the windows, they planned with the rhythm of old campaigns. Scouts to the bridge at dusk, Lena on overwatch, no colors to alert the corrupt. Graham stepped outside for air, the sun warming his face as he lit a smoke, the ember glowing like unresolved embers in his soul. The cemetery's stone loomed in memory, no longer a tomb, but a marker of deception. Redemption called, not in vengeance, but in unearthing the lies, honoring the silent sacrifice. The iron promise bound them, family forged in fire, ready to carve justice from the cynicism that had stolen too much. Yet doubt gnawed. The watcher at the mill, the chase's precision. Was Elsie truly chance, or a thread pulled by unseen hands? Graham exhaled smoke toward the sky, a vow on the wind. Whatever shadows waited at the bridge, he'd face them. For the son who'd chosen the hard road, for the crew that rode it with him. The engines would roar again soon, carrying them into the heart of the maze, where promises survived and loyalty tested the soul. If this chapter moved you, hit that like button below. It helps these stories of redemption reach more riders on the road. The sun dipped low, bleeding orange across the horizon like a wound reluctant to heal, as the Iron Promise trio crested the ridge toward the old bridge. Graham's Harley led the pack, its engine a steady growl that masked the storm churning in his chest. The air grew cooler, laced with the earthy tang of the river below and the faint metallic bite of impending rain. Jax rode flank, his silhouette sharp against the fading light, while Rook brought up the rear, eyes scanning the rear view for shadows that might have followed from the warehouse chase. The bridge loomed ahead, a rusted span from another era, its iron girders sagging like the shoulders of a man carrying too many secrets, half swallowed by overgrown willows that whispered in the breeze. Graham eased off the throttle as they neared, the vibration fading to a hum that synced with his pulse. Memories clawed at him unbidden. Elias as a boy, skipping stones from this very spot, his laughter echoing off the water like promises yet to break. One day, Dad, we'll build something here, a safe haven for the crew away from the rot. The words had been innocent then, dreams spun from summer heat and shared silences. Now they twisted into the letter's confession, a son's hidden war against the corruption that had poisoned their world. Faked death. The thought ignited a fragile hope, warring with the grief that had anchored Graham for 3 years. But hope was a dangerous rider, one that could blind you to the potholes ahead. They parked in a thicket off the access road, wheels crunching over fallen branches that snapped like brittle bones. Dusk settled heavy, the sky bruising purple, as Lena's voice crackled softly over the comm in Graham's ear. Overwatch clear. No movement on the scopes, but the town's quiet. Too quiet. Watch for ripples. Her steady tone grounded him, a reminder of the chosen family that had stitched his fractures since Elias's passing. She waited back at the clubhouse, her nurse's instincts keeping vigil, ready to mend what the night might tear open. Graham nodded to the empty air, signaling the others. Quiet approach, the drops under the east arch. Elias marked it clear. They moved like ghosts through the underbrush, boots silent on the damp earth, the river's murmur rising to meet them. Jax took point, his form low and deliberate, hand brushing the concealed knife at his belt, not for drawing blood, but for cutting through lies. Rook flanked, breath measured, the chain necklace glinting faintly as he scanned the gloom. Graham's senses sharpened, every rustle of leaves a potential threat, the air thick with the scent of moss and rust. The bridge's shadow engulfed them as they slipped beneath it, the structure creaking overhead like a weary sentinel. Water lapped at the pilings below, dark and insistent, mirroring the tide of doubt in Graham's mind. "There," Jax whispered, nodding toward a weathered concrete support, etched with faint scratches, the iron promise fist disguised as graffiti. Graham knelt, fingers probing the cracks until they found the seam. A panel shifted with a groan, revealing a hollow space. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth against the damp, lay a thick ledger, its leather cover stamped with Elias's jagged E. Graham's heart thudded, pulling it free as if handling fragile glass. The weight of it settled in his hands, heavier than any saddlebag, pages filled with meticulous entries, dates of tainted shipments, names of badges on the take, roots twisted into webs of extortion, proof irrefutable of the rot that had festered unchecked. He flipped through, the dim light from Rook's shielded flashlight casting flickering shadows. Entries leapt out, Elias's notes in the margins. Sheriff's kin pulling strings, crash staged to silence, hide for the crew. The words blurred, Graham's vision stinging with unshed emotion. His son hadn't fled cowardice. He'd vanished into deception to shield them, buying time to expose the poison without dooming the pack. Redemption bloomed sharp in Graham's chest, a father's pride mingling with the ache of betrayal. Not Elias's, but his own for believing the official veil too readily. "He did this for us," Graham murmured, voice rough as gravel. "Swore the oath and kept it, even when it meant burying himself alive in our eyes." Jax's hand clamped his shoulder, firm and unyielding. "Then we honor it. Burn this tonight. Scatter the ashes in the river. Let the truth float free." Rook nodded, his young face etched with resolve. The fire Elias had kindled now a steady flame. But before Graham could respond, a soft splash echoed from the riverbank. Too deliberate, and too close. They froze, lights doused, breaths held as footsteps approached, light and uneven, crunching through the reeds. A small figure emerged from the mist, coat flapping like a flag of innocence. Elsie. The girl's eyes widened in the gloom, clutching a small lantern that cast her face in ethereal glow. "Mr. Graham, I followed the lights, saw you from the hill." Her voice trembled, but she held her ground. The envelope from the cemetery mirrored in her posture, brave, unwitting bearer of upheaval. Graham rose slowly, signaling the others to stand down, his mind reeling. How? Why here now? "Kid, this ain't a place for you. Go home. It's not safe." She shook her head, stepping closer, the lantern swinging to reveal a folded paper in her other hand. "The man who gave me the first letter. He said to find you here if the shadows came, said you're the only one who can finish it." Graham's blood ran cold, the world tilting. A man? Alive? Directing from the fringes? He took the paper gently, unfolding it under the lantern's beam. Elias's script again. "Dad, she's the key. Trust the innocent. The bridge holds more. Under the water. Forgive the long ride." The revelation crashed over him like the river's current. Elsie, not pawn but chosen messenger, her own losses binding her to this thread of justice. Jax's eyes narrowed, scanning the dark water. Under could be a trap. But Graham felt the pull, the promise's echo demanding he dive deeper. We check it. Together. As they waded into the shallows, cold gripping their legs, the ledger tucked safe, tension coiled like a spring. Bubbles rose from the depths, hinting at submerged secrets, a waterproof case perhaps, or peril waiting below. Footsteps echoed from the bridge above, heavy, multiple flashlights piercing the night like judgment. Voices barked, "Down there, secure the area." Badges closing in. The corruption's hounds finally unleashed. Graham shoved the new note into his vest, urging Elsie behind a piling. "Stay low, kid. We've got you." The crew formed a line, not to fight, but to shield, their loyalty a wall against the storm. Engines revved distantly, backup from Lena perhaps, but the water's chill seeped deeper, truths bubbling up as danger converged. Redemption's road twisted sharper, pulling Graham toward confrontation. For Elias, for the family forged in shadows, where honor outlasted the dark. The river's chill clawed up Graham's legs like insistent fingers from the depths, the current tugging at his boots with a murmur that drowned out all but the pounding of his heart. Moonlight fractured on the water's surface, casting silvery shards that danced mockingly as the badge's flashlights swept the bridge above, beams slicing through the mist like blades of accusation. Jax positioned himself to Graham's left, a solid wall of leather and resolve, while Rook flanked right, his young frame taut as a bowstring. Elsie huddled behind the piling, her small form pressed against the rough concrete. The lantern's glow dimmed to a faint ember in her trembling hands. "Stay down, kid," Graham whispered, his voice a low rumble lost in the lap of waves. The air hung thick with the scent of damp stone and adrenaline, sharp as the first crack of thunder on the horizon. Footsteps thudded on the iron girders overhead, heavy, deliberate, accompanied by the jangle of equipment and terse commands. "Fan out! Anything moves, we take it!" The sheriff's voice, gravelly and too familiar from the hasty case closure years back, cut through the night. Graham's mind raced, piecing the ledger's entries with this intrusion. The man who'd closed Elias's file without a backward glance, now hunting shadows to bury his own sins. No guns drawn yet. The crew's code held firm. Justice not in lead, but in the unyielding light of truth. But the water's edge offered no mercy, and the submerged secret Elias had marked pulled at Graham like an unbreakable tether. "Go now," Jax hissed, nodding toward the deeper pool where bubbles had risen moments before. Graham nodded, submerging with a controlled breath, the cold shock stealing the air from his lungs. His hands fumbled through the murky silt, fingers sifting mud that yielded like reluctant confessions. The others formed a human barrier, their silhouettes blocking the beams that probed the shallows. Rook's voice carried a feigned casualness. "Evening officers, just fishermen, nothing more." The distraction bought seconds, the badger's responses laced with suspicion. Boots scraping closer to the bank. Graham's palm brushed something unyielding, a sealed case, waterproof and heavy, lodged against a root. He wrenched it free, the effort sending ripples that lapped against the pilings like warnings. Surfacing with a gasp, water streaming from his beard, he hauled it to the shallows, the metal slick and etched faintly with the promise fist. Elsie peeked out, her eyes wide but steady, the innocence in her gaze a stark counter to the encroaching storm. "Is that it? The end of the shadows?" she asked, voice barely above the water's hush. "Not yet," Graham replied, cracking the latch with the key from the mill. Inside, nestled in foam, lay a digital recorder and a stack of documents, affidavits, signed by witnesses long silenced, detailing the racket's core. Shipments diverted, payoffs funneled to the sheriff's office, Elias's discovery threatening to unravel it all. He hit play on the recorder, the tiny speaker crackling to life with Elias's voice, clear and urgent, recorded in some hidden nook. "Dad, if you hear this, know I chose the long ride to keep us clean. The crash was their play. I slipped away. Went deep to gather this. The badges own the town, but the promise owns the truth. Burn the rot, lead them right. I never broke my word." The words washed over Graham like the river's current, grief and joy colliding in a torrent that blurred his vision. Alive. His son not lost to twisted metal, but to a deliberate vanishing, a sacrifice woven from the threads of their shared oaths. Pride swelled sharp and redemptive, easing the chains of 3 years' mourning. But the voices above grew louder, flashlights pinning their position. "There! Down by the water! Freeze!" Jack stepped forward, hands raised but voice ironclad. "We've got nothing you want, Sheriff, but you've got everything to lose." He tossed the ledger up the bank, pages fluttering open in the beam's glare, names and figures spilling like exposed veins. The sheriff snatched it, his face paling under the light, as recognition dawned. This is forgery, lies from biker trash. But the tremor in his tone betrayed him, the web of corruption cracking under the weight of proof. Rook moved to shield Elsie, guiding her deeper into the reeds as engines roared from the distance. Lena and the rest of the crew, arriving like thunder on the wind, their arrival a symphony of loyalty that shook the night. No charge, no clash, just presence, a wall of chrome and vows that forced the badges to hesitate. Graham stood, case in hand, water dripping from his frame like shed doubts. "It's over. Elias saw you for what you are, thieves in uniforms. The truth rides out tonight." The sheriff's men shifted uneasily, radios crackling with urgent calls, but the recorder's playback echoed faintly, Elias's words carrying across the water. "Honor the oath." It was enough, the moral tide turning, justice poetic in its exposure rather than force. The badges retreated, grudging and exposed, the ledger left behind as damning evidence they couldn't reclaim without admitting guilt. Graham watched them go, the bridge's shadow swallowing their forms, the first raindrops pattering like applause from the sky. Back on solid ground, the crew gathered, Lena dismounting to wrap a blanket around Elsie's shoulders, her nurse's touch gentle amid the storm's hush. The girl looked up at Graham, her small smile breaking through the exhaustion. "He said you'd know what to do. The man. He watched from afar, like a guardian." Graham knelt, the case secure in his grip, and placed a hand on her head, the gesture heavy with unspoken thanks. "You brought us home, kid. Part of the family now." Jax clapped Graham's back, the bond between them a quiet anchor. "Elias's trail ends here, or leads back to him?" The question hung, suspense coiling anew. The recorder hinted at a rendezvous. Coordinates whispered at the end, a desert crossroads at dawn. Hope flickered, redemption's full circle within reach. But shadows lingered, the corruption's remnants potentially striking back. Rook revved his engine, the sound of vow renewed. Whatever's next, we ride as one. As rain intensified, washing the riverbank clean, Graham straddled his Harley, the familiar thrum vibrating through him like a heartbeat restored. The iron promise encircled, chosen kin bound by promises that outlasted deceit, their lights cutting the downpour as they rolled out. The road ahead gleamed wet and unforgiving, pulling toward reunion or final reckoning. For Elias, for the honor that had survived the grave's lie, Warden led the way, silent courage in the face of what dawn might unveil. The rain-slicked road unfurled like a silver ribbon under the Harley's tires, the downpour drumming a relentless tattoo on Graham's helmet as the iron promise convoy cut through the night. Water beaded on his leather vest, mingling with the sweat of exertion and the faint, acrid residue of the bridge's confrontation. The engine's roar blended with the storm's fury, a symphony of defiance that carried them westward, toward the desert crossroads Elias's whispered coordinates promised. Dawn was hours away, but the pull of it burned in Graham's chest, a father's reckoning fragile as the first light cracking the horizon, heavy as the case strapped to his bike. Its contents an arsenal of truths, ready to shatter the remaining shadows. Jax rode steady at his side, the older man's silhouette a constant in the rear view, his headlight piercing the veil like unyielding resolve. Rook trailed with Lena now, her chopper hugging his flank, the nurse's presence a quiet bulwark against the unknown. Elsie rode pillion behind her, the girl's small arms wrapped tight around Lena's waist, her earlier fear tempered into the wide-eyed wonder of one drawn into a legend unfolding. The air shifted as they left the river's humidity behind, giving way to the dry, mineral bite of approaching scrubland, sagebrush whipping past in blurred streaks. Graham's mind raced ahead, Elias alive, orchestrating from the fringes. His sacrifice, a thread woven through the crew's oaths, but doubt lingered like exhaust fumes. Had the badges truly backed off, or was this crossroads a final snare? They crested a final rise as the rain eased to a mist, the desert sprawling below like a vast, starlit sea. The crossroads materialized, a dusty intersection marked by weathered signs and a lone Joshua tree standing sentinel, its gnarled arms reaching toward the paling sky. Graham signaled a halt, engines idling down to a throaty murmur that echoed off the emptiness. The crew dismounted in a loose circle, boots crunching on parched earth that released a faint, dusty aroma underfoot. Flashlights swept the perimeter, beams catching glints of dew on cactus spines, but the night held its breath. No movement save the wind sighing through the branches. "Spread out, eyes sharp," Graham said, his voice low and edged with the gravel of anticipation. He unstrapped the case, the metal cool against his palm, and powered on the recorder once more, Elias's voice filling the quiet. "Dawn at the cross. Come alone if you must, but the promise rides with you." The words hung, a ghost made flesh, stirring the air with unspoken emotion. Jax nodded toward the tree, his scarred hand gesturing to fresh tracks in the dirt, tire marks, recent, veering off into a hidden arroyo. "He's here, or was." They advanced as one, the group's unity a palpable force, chosen family moving with the precision of riders who'd faced worse than desert phantoms. Lena kept Elsie close, the girl's lantern now a soft beacon in her hand, its glow painting their faces in warm hues. The arroyo dipped sharply, walls of red rock rising like silent witnesses, the scent of creosote sharpening with each step. At the bottom, a single bike waited. Elias's old Norton battered but unmistakable, its chrome dulled by dust and time. Graham's breath caught, the world narrowing to that machine. A relic from boyhood rides now anchoring impossible hope. A figure stepped from the shadows, lean and hooded, the dawn's first blush outlining broad shoulders and a familiar stance. The hood fell back, revealing Elias's face, thinner, etched with lines 3 years had carved, but his eyes, those fierce green eyes, locked on Graham's with a mix of apology and unyielding pride. "Dad." The word cracked the silence, raw and real, Elias's voice carrying the timbre of engines and endless horizons. Graham staggered forward, the case dropping forgotten to the sand, his arms enveloping his son in a crush that spoke volumes no letter could. The embrace was fierce, calloused hands gripping leather and bone, the scent of sweat and desert filling Graham's lungs as tears he hadn't shed in years blurred his vision. "You fool," he murmured, voice breaking like thunder rolling distant. "Why? The crew. We mourned you." Elias pulled back just enough, his grip firm, the iron promise patch on his vest a mirror to Graham's own. "Had to. The rot went deep, sheriff's web tangled in everything we touched. I faked it with a contact, went underground to gather what the badges buried. Letters through Elsie, her folks were victims too, pulled her in quiet. Couldn't risk you all till it was ironclad." The crew closed in, Jax clasping Elias's shoulder with a nod that needed no words, Rook's grin splitting wide as he punched his old mentor's arm lightly. Lena smiled, wrapping Elsie in a side hug, the girl beaming up at Elias like a long-lost uncle. "You kept the oath," Jax said simply, the weight of their shared vows settling like dust after a storm. Elias nodded, pulling a satchel from his bike. "Final affidavits, recordings, enough to topple the corruption without a shot fired. Burned the ledger last night like I promised. This goes to the feds. Clean channels, justice, not revenge." Dawn broke fully now, sunlight spilling over the crossroads in golden waves, bathing them in warmth that chased the night's chill. Graham stepped back, surveying his son, the boy made man through silent sacrifice. Redemption flooded him, not as a blaze but a steady fire, grief transmuted to purpose, the promise he'd failed in blindness now fulfilled in reunion. "You rode alone too long," he said, voice steady. "But the road's wider now. Iron promise, whole again." Elsie tugged Elias's sleeve, her innocence the thread that had bound them all. "You left the letter for a reason, to fix things." He knelt, ruffling her hair. "Yeah, kid, truth's the best ride." The group mounted up as one, engines harmonizing in a roar that scattered the mist, the desert awakening around them. No shadows pursued. The Badger's empire crumbled under the weight of exposed lies, their retreat a silent admission of defeat. Justice, moral and poetic, had prevailed, not through force, but the unbreaking loyalty of a family chosen, promises enduring like the horizon. As they rolled east, the sun climbing high, Graham rode beside Elias, the two Harleys sinking in rhythm, father and son reclaiming lost miles. The wind carried the scent of freedom, sage and open sky, a sensory vow of new dawns. The iron promise stretched behind, unbreakable, their legacy one of quiet courage and honor reclaimed. In a world of cynicism, they'd carved redemption from the dust, proving that some oaths outlast even the grave. Thank you for riding this journey with us to the end. If these tales of loyalty and second chances touched your soul, subscribe for more stories that honor the road less traveled. We'd be honored to have you along for the next chapter.